All right, that barking means you've started another episode of the Rocker Dog Podcast. For those of you not familiar, this is the show where we talk to musicians about their dogs and the value these creatures bring to all our lives. I'm your host, Tim Dill. My spirit animal is my domesticated descendant of the wolf, Charlie. And today our very special guest is who The Guardian calls one of indie rock's most fascinating figures. It's Kristin Hersh of Throwing Muses, 50-Foot Wave, and her own prolific solo career. Kristin is currently finishing up the next new Throwing Muses record, and these are her career-spanning rocker dogs.
My Great Pyrenees, Goose, and I have a couple more. I have an English Shepherd named Sonny. She's in New Orleans with another son. I have lots of sons too, and they each have one of my dogs.
Are they your dogs that they took, or you got them got them together as a family and then they moved out?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So Goose, the Great Pyrenees, is the newest baby. He's only 3.
Okay.
But Sonny has been around and toured with me. Yeah, I don't know if you know English Shepherds, that kind of border collie-esque, but not as quick.
Okay.
A little more family doggy.
Okay.
But she's a road dog for sure. She grew up on our tour bus with my 4 sons. And at the time, like sometimes I had a few other dogs, and she's the last one of that generation. Like we had a Yorkie too that would crawl into a camera bag so that we could hide him in hotels. And he knew like to be really quiet in the elevator.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and he was great. He just knew the drill. He would like run down the tour bus steps with my boys, and they'd all play frisbee for a while at truck stops and come back on the bus. And so I guess Sonny, the English Shepherd, had enough to keep her occupied and a sort of focus on my boys that negated all else.
Yeah. Well, that's great as a parent as well. You know,
Yeah.
that the shepherd your kids.
Yes. And then I had a Great Dane too, who also was an amazing tour dog. The Dane and the Yorkie were the best ones, oddly. Because
a full-grown Great Dane, like 70 pounds at minimum, I guess?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was he was a big one too, pony-sized, and his name was Grandpa. He was just so chill, as they are, and he didn't need a leash or anything. So when we stopped, he would go out and he knew the frisbee drill as well, or we'd throw a football around. He'd just sort of run back and forth and then be tuckered out after 3 laps because he's a Great Dane.
Yeah.
The Yorkie was the opposite. But they just learn what makes the boys happy, I suppose.
Yeah.
And when you're on the road, not a lot makes your kids happy. So it was really important to me to bring dogs on the road. And it's half the reason I had my own bus and my bandmates in 50-Foot Wave. And I, lived on it. And it was a beautiful family. And I'm not sure it would have felt like a family if it weren't for the dogs.
Right. Did you grow up with dogs? Did you have that instilled in you? So when you started a family, it was kind of important to you to have that aspect?
Yeah. My first dog was out in a barn in the woods with a bunch of hippies. I was 3 years old, and her name was Zoey. And they had, the hippie VW bus, and they had the hippie drugs. So she died. She got run over by the bus. And
oh no,
I know, and I still remember it. And so I had to. Years later, we got another dog, Sheltie, and I named her Zoey too. And it sort of in my head, it fixed it. But because of the love and the heartbreak and the fixing the heartbreak, I carried that over. As soon as I have my children, it's like you need to know nature in your home, love as a view, a protector that you nurture, and vice versa, a friend that doesn't ask you to talk. All of these important life lessons are just encapsulated in one friend that is your family, and you can turn to them when you can't turn to anyone else. And sometimes my boys couldn't turn to me because I was the one working, and I was always being pulled away for press or stage or sound check. And they had dogs that sort of knew that the dogs seemed to understand this is my time to step in.
Right.
So yeah, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. A touring musician can't have a dog, right? But I did it because it was really, really important.
Well, I'm
We had
curious,
a Weimaraner named Crow.
that was
Who,
as you were a child growing up, or was that also part of a
no, this
touring
is for
dog?
my boys. When I
Okay.
was about to have my third baby, Wyatt, I knew my son Ryder wanted his own baby, and we got a Weimaraner that he grew up in the studio in New Orleans at Kingsway Studios, and because half of my life is spent in the studio, so is his, and he ended up meeting this just every rock star there is in the French Quarter.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was a party animal. And he was appreciated. Sometimes he would stay on in the studio when I had to go, and he became the studio mascot.
Yeah, I hear that often in the benefits of that. And actually, I found you through Chris Colburn of Buffalo Tom. He was on the
Oh,
show and he mentioned that you had and I'm curious if this rings any bells. Maybe this is the Yorkie. He said, "Oh yeah, Kristen used to have one, and it would come up on stage with her." And he said,
yeah.
described it as a little dog.
Yeah, it was the Yorkie. He would just, because he was following us everywhere we went, he would follow me onto the stage at sound check. And so he thought he was supposed to do that again for the show. And it was great because as a shy person, I'm not real psyched about being up there anyway. My focus is such that that will take hold. And then I become music. But in the meantime, I'm just a little bummed that I got to do that. So to have Captain come up, he just took all the heat. He was so cute and he looked like a puppy for his whole 20-year life. And they obviously the whole audience was just focused on the dog the entire time. Nobody heard a note or looked at me once. And he was so good at chewing the scenery. He would make it real subtle. He would just take a little walk, greet some of the people in the front row. And he knew how to pull the attention away without being hyperactive.
Yeah, I love
We
it.
were a good team.
I love it.
It's great that Chris remembers that. That's so sweet.
Yeah, I mean, he went on to say that touring for him was a mix of boredom and anxiety. And he said whenever there was a dog around, it just made everybody calmer. And I assume
That is
that's
a really
true.
good point. Yeah, we're like firefighters, and the extremes of boredom and the extremes of stress. That's true. I mean, a dog will sometimes reflect I'm going to say your issues.
Mhm.
Things you should probably look at that you feel sorry for inflicting on the dog. But they seem to do that with a whole lot of mercy.
Now, do you find this is the point you were getting at was, when the dog is at the studio, it brings out the best in others as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I've often thought we could use a dog, in the state house floor.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Good
They
point. Good
really,
point.
they're fundamental, I want to say, and they have a grasp of the fundamental. And when we tend to overthink and make something of ourselves, they do the opposite. They they make nothing of us. That's
Yeah.
so important.
Now, with Goose, your most recent, what was the surrounding circumstances of getting him at the time?
My baby son was going to take over our California apartment where he and I lived because my band 50 Foot Wave was doing the music for a surfing documentary. And we were watching them shoot surfers, and my son Bo is a surfer as well. And I said, look, it's just the two of us left in our family, and I can live anywhere I want. Tell me what you want to do with your life. Where would you like to be? And we'll try to make it happen. Because they're all homeschooled, and so they have to direct their own lives, and I
Hmm.
need to facilitate that a little more than most parents. And he said, here. So we moved to Encinitas, which is the sort of the heart and soul of the surfing industry, and he was sponsored instantly and had to stay. So I've been there this whole time, kind of as Bo's mom. Nobody really knows me any other way there, which is very refreshing.
Yeah.
And he just turned 21, and so I was just turning the place over to him and saying, like, "What? You grew up, so I have to move out." He says I left him with empty nest.
Funny.
And part of that, easing that transition was, take a year, find the perfect dog. We've had so many, you know what you're looking for. He's worked at zoos and bird sanctuaries and herpetological breeding facilities. Like, he's very animal conscious. He's rescued thousands of animals, seagulls, snakes, water monitors, like just thousands. Like a crazy household because of Bodhi. But I said, animals, you know what you're looking for, you know what you want in a roommate and in a friend. So take a whole year and find the right dog. And he left that afternoon and came home with a Goose.
You're kidding me? That's so funny.
Giant puppy, this big goofy baby. And he was right, but he was right. He found the ideal dog that afternoon for him.
That's a great breed. I mean, that's a very protective breed as well.
His litter mates had a normal dog expression, happy. Goose just looked worried when he was a baby, and he's still worried. So he just sort of hums, if he's concerned about something, but he stayed big baby. He's not taking care of anybody else.
Okay. Well, maybe he needs training on that. It's not as much, a part of his breeding.
Well, they're supposed to be big, right? And they're supposed to notice every shadow. So they can't scare the sheep. They can't be aggressive, but they have to maybe like bark once, or maybe hum. Maybe humming is what they do. That's what Goose does.
He hums?
Yeah.
I love that.
My Great Dane did too. He was very vocal. He had that like, oh
yeah.
That kids do too. That we still do. We all speak grandpa still.
Well, I did notice you do have somebody's got a pet snake, right? Somebody's got that big black snake?
Hundreds. Yeah, we have so many snakes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bodhi and I have just been obsessed with snakes, but the indigo was we've had 2 indigos now. And when I was 6 years old, that's when I fell in love with indigos. And I never mentioned this to Bodhi. He was just born with the indigo gene, where you seek out indigos.
Is that a type of snake? I'm not familiar with that.
Yep. That's the black one.
That's the black snake. Okay.
Yeah, we got a bunch of other ones. We had one that a 12-foot bright yellow Burmese python that liked to play in the yard. And so she would just go kind of play and then come back to us, and then play and come back to us. And Burmese python's parent, so they know to expect something like that. They recognize some social gestures on our part. And so we just thought of her as one of the dogs, really, until we saw the neighbors' windows overlooked our yard. Ashton.
I can imagine.
All right, well, sunshine can play inside now.
I mean, on social media, I see there's one shot of the snake like facing the dog, but I noticed like, oh, the snake's inside, the dog's outside the house. And then you have a lot of squirrels that look like they've been photographed inside the house.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And the dogs who would probably, try to tree a squirrel in the world know that these are our squirrels, and they just sort of go nose to nose with them the way they do with, a cat or another dog. They just know, well, they're in the family. Mm-hmm. And the same with the snakes. The snakes don't bother the dogs, and they don't bother the snakes. It's just some sort of unspoken rule. This is the fam.
Yeah, it's good. You don't need any added drama.
Right. Yeah, we have enough of that.
Were all 4 of your boys, did they all grow up to embrace dogs? Did they all get along with them all their lives and kind of attached to them, or were some more than others?
My oldest son, Dooney, was afraid of dogs because I thought a touring musician couldn't have any. I thought there was nothing I could do about it. And obviously the only thing you can do about it is to get a dog. And so I did. And I thought, well, just deal with it. And he was instantly in love, of course. And as the puppies are too. And we had a rescue after that named Kitty, who was a collie husky mix. And she was, I want to say, the dog. I don't know if you get like more than one soulmate dog for lifetime. Yeah. She was mine, and she was perfect. Like I'm welling up talking about her. Like I put lipstick on for that dog. And I would never have trained her. I had a border collie named Lopez that knew 40 voice commands and 40 hand signals, but he needed to. Kitty, it would have been an insult to ask anything of her except what she wanted to do. She was a goddess. Right. And she was by my side. I guess when I adopted her, they said she was 3. And so I just took that to be a personality trait, as if she were always 3. And then one afternoon, 10 years later, she just put her head down in a strange way. And my son Ryder and I knew there's something wrong. And she was gone by 3 a.m. the next morning. So we all got to say goodbye, a little confused about the way she went. She just sort of lay down and wasn't Kitty anymore. But that was when it really kicked in for all of us. Her presence was when we all realized there's something, I'm going to say, more important than important when it comes to dogs. This is a necessary venture on our part to move toward these people who aren't human and come away better for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you frame that as your soul dog, because that's a question I would have forgot to ask, but I like to ask that when there is an artist that has a long list of dogs in their life. Is there that one dog that was just a little bit more profound than the others? And it's always interesting to hear why, and often it's just, that point of your life or the changes in your life. So it sounded like it was, right in the middle of the crux of motherhood and probably all the chaos that was going on in your life.
Isn't that amazing? They time it so well. She was there for my life absolutely falling apart, and mothers aren't allowed to let that happen. So she was there for me, not letting it fall apart. The drama that she lived through with me, I can't even begin. And she left before I was ready. I was still picking up the pieces, but it's like she knew, okay, you're going to have to learn that you can do this yourself. And so to do it without Kitty was the last stage in being strong, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you attuned any differently from a female dog to a male dog?
We tend to think that the male dogs have been goofier and the female dogs a little more sensitive. And as a human, I hate to say things like that.
Does that correlate?
Yeah. And the female dogs have been a little bit more at our side. The male dog's a little more adventurous, but Kitty sort of surpassed everything. She would just sit like a sphinx in the corner, and people said her energy was, I forgive you.
She's all knowing. She's all knowing.
Yes, exactly. But we were also referred to as the broken blondes, me and Kitty. The vet would say, she's so chill, so calm, so gentle on the outside, and her heart is going a million miles an hour.
Oh, really?
I did that to her. That's me.
Very interesting. Well, I wrap up all my shows with what I call the Zoomies, and that's just 5 fast, mostly frivolous questions. The first one is, do you kiss your dogs on the mouth?
No, because I have 4 boys to do that for me.
Okay. To do the kissing of the dogs?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Being a musician and an artist, do you ever give your dogs a theme song? Do any of your dogs either have a theme song from you or just have a song that's out there, a popular song that's on the radio that you can attach to them that reminds you of them?
They all had their own theme songs. I don't know how you knew that.
But original compositions?
Yeah, except for like
or kind of adaptations of.
Yeah, we all just knew their melody, their theme. When they walked through our room, we would all sing. It was a melody, no words, but there was one dog, Gus, who is so brain dead that his theme was was it happy enough, Yeah. Other than that, they were all original compositions.
Okay. Question 3 is, if your dog toured with you, which your dog has in the past, what would they want on their tour rider? And I'm curious, did you ever actually put anything in the tour rider for the dogs?
I didn't, but the clubs would all remember that we toured with kids and dogs. And so it'd be these awesome, like the the door guy usually looks like a Hell's Angel. Would be there with comic books, little boxes of raisins, a box of milk bones,
That's so nice.
and dog toys. Yeah. So they would do it of their own accord. I wouldn't presume, but because what you need on the road is something that brings you back down to reality. And if that thing is wholesome, all the more so. So I would show up with kids and dogs, and people would feel such relief that now those parts of their lives that were missing were filled.
Right.
And we did play a role in club people's lives. And those years when you could play every night and play every year, those were our friends. They were all over America, all over the world. But they were grateful to us. I felt like I was going to be a pain in the ass. It's like I show up with all these kids and all these dogs. And they were so happy.
Yeah, I can see that.
And they were friendly dogs and friendly kids. My kids had to be able to carry on conversations with adults, obviously, as a lifestyle. And yet they were still kids. They weren't precocious. They were just kind, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And that kindness made them a whole lot of friends that, they didn't look like people you'd call your friends playmates, maybe.
Yeah, the Hell's Angel biker you were describing.
Exactly. But they'd all be doing chalk drawings on the sidewalk outside of the club, and there'd be dogs running around. It was a good life.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine. Question 4 is, do you have a dog voice? Do you use a dog voice? Do you go into high pitch or baby voice in speaking to your dogs?
Wow. I do. I have a squirrel voice, but no, my dogs weren't very cute to me. They seemed like equals.
Right.
Even though the Yorkie was very sentient and intelligent, he was a grown man, and so I didn't talk down to my dogs.
And question 5 is there a dog organization or a service that you would like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, there's some great organizations in New Orleans, so I don't know how to choose, but the one I grew up with on Aquidneck Island in Rhode Island is the Potter League shelter, and they are full service, inexpensive vet services and dog training, and a really gentle, inviting facility that has not gone boutique-y and has not brought any vanity to, how dogs they're an excuse for some of us to extend our egos and look like good people when really we have no place taking their souls and using them for anything.
Yeah.
The Potter League is just very inviting. Everyone can come in and meet their animals, and they don't make it difficult for a kid in love to take that animal home.
Yeah.
My son and I used to go just to set our souls straight. It's like your heartbeat slows down a bit, and they like that you can help socialize the animals by visiting them. Yeah,
that's great. But Kristin, listen, I appreciate you giving me your time. I was very excited to have you accept the invitation to come on, and I'm glad we had time to sort out your long list of dogs. And I'm pleasantly surprised that there were so many, and I wish we could spend 3 hours talking about them.
Me too. Yeah, I left some out even. But thank you for doing what you do, Tim. This is a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care, sweetheart.
All right, you too.